All right, it's time for another 5 minutes here, and joining me is somebody who helped shape this young mind right here. It's Jason Bowen, and oddly enough, I don't think I've ever called you Jason before, but here we are. Welcome. How you doing? How's everything?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Oh, hanging in there, doing the best we can, trying to hopefully entertain the folks a little bit here while we're all trapped inside. So, what's our topic going to be today? We know guest picks the topic, so what do you have for us?
We have iRacing today. It's my one saving grace since there's no sports of any kind, realistic sports at least. So iRacing it is, at least for now.
All right. Well, let's put 5 minutes up on the clock and get ready to go. We're talking iRacing here. All right. So obviously, with a lot of the races being canceled and some seasons being held up, they've turned to iRacing, and the video game format. Everybody knows it well. Some of the racers are starting to learn it. And what can you tell us, especially at the Formula One and IndyCar levels?
With iRacing, what I've noticed is that it's becoming, at least from what I've seen, where a lot of the drivers are keeping kind of their skills going. It's keeping their sharpness. It's, of course, it's not the same physically as being out there on the track, but the one thing it is it keeps the mind and the reflexes and things like that going. If you've ever seen, what these guys do, if you've ever seen their rigs, as they call them, and their setups, I mean, these things are intense. I mean, these guys spend thousands and thousands of dollars on these, spend even more thousands of hours doing them. And, some of the guys compete in hundreds of races. And now you've got these guys all over the world who are racing. I watched an IndyCar race about a week ago. And one of the guys was up at like 2 a.m. from New Zealand to race, and he ended up winning the race against regular IndyCar drivers. Now, he's a guy who is a race car driver and is potentially going to come over here and actually race some IndyCar races. But to see what these guys can do on these simulated games and how realistic they are, it's just incredible.
I like the fact that it kind of blends the younger generation with the older guys too, who are just learning this for the first time. And not that Dale Earnhardt Jr. is old or anything, but I know he's going to race in the IndyCar iRacing race tomorrow, the Chevrolet 275, which is going to be on a simulated Michigan International Speedway. So that ought to be fun to watch tomorrow morning. But I saw some of the rigs. You tagged me in some posts that I got to take a look, and the massive screens, and they're in the bucket seats, and they've got it going on with the wheel and the pedals, and it's not exactly like being out on the track, but at least it's something in the meantime. And they're putting these things on TV so everybody can watch them, and it almost seems as entertaining as the real thing. And I think it's been a great replacement in the meantime. People seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, talking about Dale Jr. doing the racing, that's one of the nice things about it is you get the crossover. And Jimmy Johnson's done a couple races. I think tomorrow is going to be Dale's first one in the IndyCars. But Jimmy Johnson, he's been doing this for just a few weeks now, and I think he's had probably better experience actually doing the IndyCar ones than he did in the NASCAR ones that he's done. Some drivers, obviously, the younger guys seem to have a little bit more experience with it, so they tend to be the ones dominating the races. But at the same time, you're getting people like Will Power, who's been in IndyCars for 15 years or so, and he's doing pretty well too. And I think it's one of those things where he's maybe not as experienced as a lot of these people, but he's still, if you're a good driver, you're a good driver. And they say a lot of times these things are actually harder to master than being behind the wheel of a real car. I guess you probably don't have the same feel for it as you would per se. The cars do move around, and they do have, they actually have shocks in these simulators that kind of twist and turn and give a little bit of the feel, but it's still not the same as a real car. So I know, having done, I went to the Indianapolis 500 a few years ago, and they had a little one you could kind of test out for about 5 minutes, and I crashed every time I pushed the gas pedal down. So I can imagine it's probably a little easier for them, but it's definitely not like getting behind the wheel of a real car. So, to adjust to them and to adjust to the way the cars are set up. I mean, they actually have, it's like a real car. You set it up, you learn to drive it like you would a real race car.
Yeah, I was reading about William Byron, who won the race a couple of weeks ago, that he didn't actually get into racing actual cars until he was 15 years old. He was 13 and using the iRacing platforms so he could get used to it. And he was, I think they were saying, about a decade behind when you would normally get into a car and get into racing, and look at him going out here actually winning actual races. And of course, it helped him a couple weeks ago too when he won his iRacing race. But for me, and I have to throw it out here, I'm a big Denny Hamlin guy. He won the first one, so of course it got me hooked immediately. So I'll be watching here. We got a little less than a minute to go here. But how do you see this growing maybe in the future? Is this something you might see happen in the off season as a regular thing?
It could. It's one of those things I find it really interesting. I mean, it's a nice relief to be able to actually watch some form of racing. I wish they would televise them all. Formula One, they do tend to run those just online, and that's my passion. That's the one area that I'm really into. But I'm hoping that it does grow more and more. I mean, we're still probably at least 3 months away from any actual live in-person racing, so it can only go up from there. I can't imagine it would be something that's just going to go away. So hopefully, I think this is one of those things that we see a change in, and maybe it gets a little bit of publicity to start with. We'll see.
Yeah, we will. Hey, you came in right under the wire at 4:59. How about that?
There you go.
That's how we do it here in 5 minutes. Jason, thanks so much for stopping by. Hopefully we'll see you soon.
No problem.